Harriet, what's your full name?
Harriet Pepine.
You have no middle initial, no middle name?
No.
Did you ever have a nickname?
No.
No, not growing, not...
No.
Well, neither did I, so we have that in common. Where did Harriet come from, by the way? Who gave you that name?
That was the name my mother gave me when I was born.
Mm-hmm. Was there another Harriet somewhere in the family? Or is it you the first Harriet?
No.
Okay.
I was the only one.
What was your maiden name?
Ash, A-S-C-H.
Uh-huh. And you are now living in, let's see, is it Hauppauge or CI?
Hauppauge.
It's Hauppauge. You are widowed.
No.
You're not widowed.
No, I'm single. I'm divorced.
You're single and divorced. Okay.
Yes.
I forgive me. It was a mistake that I don't know where I got that idea from. You have children, do you?
Yes, I have 3 children.
Tell me about them, their names, where they're living.
My oldest son is Matthew. He's living outside of Portland, Oregon, in a town called Beaverton. He's majored in biochemistry, and he's a professor, assistant professor at the Oregon Graduate Institute of Science and Technology. He's married and has no children. My second child is a daughter, Marcy, who lives in Comac, and she's a real estate appraiser. And I have a third son, my youngest, Alan, who lives outside of San Francisco in Orinda, California. And he's a assistant professor at Berkeley. And he's also in the research division.
Oh my goodness! So you've got a family of educators there, except for your daughter.
Well, yes. Well, my daughter studied education at BU, and when she graduated, which was in 1980, see, their father owned a private school, and so that they worked in this school during the summers, and they were around children. We lived there, and had a lot of experience with teaching, and so she could not get a job when she graduated from college in 1982. So she looked elsewhere.
Now, your husband at the time, you mentioned he had a private school. I think we've talked about that in the past, but remind me, if you don't mind, for our audience, what was that school? Where?
Mark Country Day School in Bayshore.
Oh, okay. All right.
Leonard Sachs.
So this is where your youngsters had a lot of exposure to education.
They grew up there. We lived there.
Okay.
It was a very novel experience. There aren't many children that have that experience.
I would say so. That was a very, very different school, and certainly had a wide reputation for excellence.
It was a wonderful school, and it's still in existence and doing very well.
Okay.
They had very good opportunity there.
Were the 3 children, were their personalities of your sons and your daughter? Tell me about the differences rather than telling you, rather you tell me, how are they different in terms of personality, qualities, talents, their interests?
Well, I often compare the 2 boys because they're both in the science field, and one would always meet the deadlines, and the other one would always be would always meet it, but he would be a little slower. And so one of them would always get the work in much faster than the others, and he'd have it done a week ahead of time, and one was last minute. Same with packing, same with a lot of things. All 3 children, I know I'm the mother, but are very sweet and very devoted. And they really got the most out of that school. They really have a love for education. They like to give. And they are teaching, they teach, and they run labs because they're doing research.
Are you the person that, and I think you are, you tell me if I'm wrong, are you the person that loves to get things done right away?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it's gotten more so as time goes on. I do not leave things to the last minute.
You're not a procrastinator.
I cannot.
No.
I mean,
that's what I thought.
People at my grade level used to laugh because my report cards would be done a week before, and they would be in the classroom that morning finishing them. I cannot work under pressure.
That would have
That's
been me.
what it amounts
That would have
to.
been me, Harriet, just so you know.
You can't work under pressure?
I can.
Oh,
I have to have that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That push.
That's just the way you're born. I don't think you can change some things.
I didn't hear any mention of grandchildren yet. Are there any
I have two
grandchildren?
grandchildren. They live in Orinda. I have a grandchild, a granddaughter, Rebecca, who's 7, and a granddaughter, Sarah, who's 4.
7 and 4. Any window yet into the personality there or the qualities that you see? Or is it too early to see yet things taking
Believe
shape?
it or not, I think the oldest granddaughter takes after her uncle.
Uh-huh.
When she wants something done, when she wants something, she pursues it until she doesn't let go.
Yes.
She follows right through.
Yes.
They're very strong-minded.
Wonderful. That's great. That's great. Do you see them very often? That's the other thing.
Yes,
about
I try to get to see them 3 or 4 times a year.
Oh, that's great. Where were you born?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, Brooklyn.
Oh, where in Brooklyn?
Flatbush area.
Uh-huh. And you were a Roosevelt baby, no doubt?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So you were born in that period between
the Depression.
In the Depression.
Just
years.
when the Depression hit.
Mm-hmm.
And although I didn't know what was going on.
Yes. Do you have early memories of I'm not sure if the question is of the Depression or early memories of that time of life growing up.
I didn't know if my life was any different from anybody else's. My mother was very food conscious, so she knew how to prepare nourishing meals on very little money, because unless you had some kind of a job, you really didn't have very much money. And the type of work my father had he was self-employed.
What did he do?
He was a salesman. He sold restaurant supplies.
To restaurants, hotels.
Restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it wasn't steady, and income could not be depended upon.
Yes.
And she sewed, and she did what she could for us. And when I got to college, I found other students that had really suffered even more than I. I mean, I don't remember being hungry. Other people remembered being hungry. Mm. She would make us a dress to go to school with, and then you took it off when you came home. Mm-hmm. So a new pair of shoes was an occasion.
Yes.
I used to think Thanksgiving dinners were for Christian people.
Yeah.
Because we never had the turkey. We couldn't afford the turkey. And so I didn't know. But she would try to make it a little festive with something special, or eating in a special room. And it wasn't a time of affluence. But what it did for us was made us very creative. We would make our own games. We copied somebody's Monopoly set. We, of course, played out on the street a lot, and the stickball, and all these wonderful things, rode bicycles, rode roller skates, went ice skating, did all these things. Nothing was programmed for us. So we had to think up things to occupy ourselves.
That didn't cost any money.
That didn't cost any money.
Yeah.
No, we learned to share and to cooperate.
It's not alone I assume you're talking about growing up in the city, so you're talking about street games with chalk on the road.
It wasn't the city; it was a suburb, but we had sidewalks, and it wasn't a city, so we didn't have to worry so much about cars.
What are we talking about? What part of the?
I'm talking about in the 40s.
In the 40s.
Early 40s. I had now lived in Flushing.
In Flushing, okay, all right, okay.
And interesting thing that...
But the streets were still paved in Flushing at that time, because I know the suburbs, very often you had Bluestone.
Oh, no, we weren't very far out.
Okay.
No, there was good bus service and so on. It was a suburb of Manhattan. And everybody on the street used to play. Yes. The bigger boys, the younger children, we just all would have fun. We built snow forts. I mean, we'd play for hours outside. Yeah. You don't see a lot of that today.
No, you do not. No, and as you said, it's not the kind of creative toys, scooters out of soapboxes and hopscotch with chalk and stickball, you said, and stoop ball.
Stoop ball was lots of fun, sure. It just brings to mind that when my daughter was in college, the first school she went to, which was Goddard, she was taking a course, and they wanted her to enumerate and describe all of the kinds of games that people played way back in the early 1900s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. And these are the games that came to mind, and jacks. So we had a tendency to appreciate something when we got it.
Oh, I can agree with all of those memories, having experienced a lot of them myself. Were your earliest childhood memories associated with Flushing? Is that where you had, or do you remember anything prior to that?
I remember parts of Brooklyn, Flatbush Avenue. We were near Brooklyn College and walking. We used to, my mother, of course, we come from a family of walkers, used to love to walk. I remember the schools, very nice.
Was yours a big family or a small family?
And I had a sister and a brother.
Okay. And where are you in the birth order?
The baby.
You're the baby.
The youngest.
All right. Is there 1 or 2 or 4 years, 2 years, 4 years between each of you? Or are you separated by?
My sister was 3 years older. My brother was 1.5 years older.
Okay. Now, I know this is maybe seen by some as a trite question, but did your being the youngest, the quote baby unquote of the family, have, do you think, a formative influence on the way you see the world or grew up seeing life because you were the youngest? Did it change your perspective from the way your older siblings see things, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Harriet, I want to ask you about your mom and memories of her as a child, your earliest memories of your mother.
Very hard worker. She ended up to be a single mom and very responsible, was always there for us. Always ready to listen, worked very hard, she did get a job. She got a job where she could work in the house. And she just did the best she could and was very dependable when we wanted to go to college. Even though we really didn't have any funds to do it, we could live at home and go to college, and it wasn't a problem.
When you say your mom ended up to be a single mom, are we talking here about?
They were separated.
A separation, okay. She had to be a very courageous woman in those days to do that, because that was not done for the most part. Women were, the culture at that time was a very different culture than it is today.
Very strong-minded, very, very domineering.
What would you, do you know anything about her own family background, her family history or traditions or roots, her mother and father? You knew your grandparents on her side of the family, did you?
My grandmother died when I was very young.
Okay.
I knew my grandfather, and he was a very nice person.
Yeah. You have any particular memories of him, of the time that you spent with him?
He taught me to play cards. He lived with us for a while. And I used to come up to his room with his hot milk in the morning, and he would teach me how to play rummy, and we would sit and play.
Buddies, yeah. What did your mom, when she had the time, because you mentioned she was very busy and she was sewing, by the way, when you said she sewed just for you, or did she?
She made all our clothes.
Did she do
My
that?
sister and I.
Did she do that also as a source of income, or no?
No.
That was just for the family, for you. What did she love to do, or what did she enjoy doing? What was her pleasure in life?
It's really hard to say, because she worked all day and she would sew for us at night. And she would cook all our meals. And I never did the cooking. And she was tired.
Yeah.
And aside from that, my older sister was sick.
Oh.
So off and on, she had a worry. My sister got sick when she was very young with Crohn's disease, and she was sick throughout her life. So my mother was always very concerned about her. So it was a big drain on her.
I would say your mother had very little time to take care of her own pleasure needs, certainly her enjoyment. She was a very busy mom.
But after we were out of the house, I know she was a big reader. She read a lot. And I know we used to watch craft theater and a lot of the dramas on TV. She loved that.
Do you, how would you describe your father from your early memories?
Very warm and loving towards me, and that's about all I want to say about him.
Okay. Let's see what else we have here. I guess one of the things I'd like to know is if our brothers and sisters generally are, to some degree at least, role models of things that we might like to try to emulate, or early on, speaking for myself, find that I just can't do that? I'm not even going to try to do that. Was there anything that you watched your siblings do that you thought, gee, I'd like to learn to do it, or I'd like to try that, or found that that's not for me, I can't handle that? Are they I don't know how else to phrase it, except is there's something that they, well, obviously you became a teacher at some point. Mm-hmm. Was there anyone else among your nuclear family that went into education?
No, my sister was a very good student. She went to Queens College. She was a year or two ahead of me. Mm-hmm. And I used to admire her choice of courses and her intelligence and her academic achievements. And that's what I aspire to.
Okay.
Be as good as her.
Yeah, okay. Were there adult influences in your early life outside of family? Outside of mom, dad, or perhaps grandparents? Was there somebody else as an adult that really had a special relationship with you, or you with them?
I have, my mother's brother was my uncle, was very good to the family, very kind, very sweet. Mm-hmm. And he just was very nice to us.
Okay. Who was it in your life that influenced this choice of career for you, that education became your path?
Lenny.
Uh-huh. Okay.
He thought I would make a wonderful teacher.
Uh-huh.
So
and at what point did you know that that's what you were going to do? Because after you were married, then obviously
I took some courses after I was married at City College and Hunter College. Uh-huh. And then we came out to Brentwood. Mm-hmm. We lived in Brentwood to begin with. Mm-hmm. And after I moved to Bayshore and the school opened, then I went for certification in education, because by that time I started working in the school and I really enjoyed it. And I thought it would be good for me to have the certification.
When you said you lived in Brentwood first, what year would that have been?
We moved there in 1957.
Okay. Boy, those were the years of real growth in this community.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible change. Have you kept connection with any of the people that you went to school with as a child? Any of your, like, high school or elementary school? Okay. I asked this question of people. Some people have vivid memory. Some people have no memory at all. But can you describe the room where you slept as a youngster? Can you remember the bedroom or the room, whatever it was?
No, it wasn't particularly worth mentioning.
Okay. Now, refresh my memory again. Where you give me a chronology of where you were born, where you moved to, until you came out to Brentwood and then Bayshore. Go through that one more time for me.
Lived in Brooklyn, as a lot of people. It's either Brooklyn or the Bronx, it seemed. We started
in your case,
somewhere.
It was around Flatbush, in that area.
Then we moved to Little Neck, which was beautiful, and stayed there for a year. Actually, my family raised dogs.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, Scotties.
Scotties.
And they were beautiful.
Now, Little Neck is right within the city line, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes. Okay.
It's Great Neck Little Neck and Great Neck border on each other. Mm-hmm. And then they decided to give up the dogs. So we moved to Flushing. Ah. And my mother chose the house. It was in the Bound Park section because there was a public park nearby that had a beautiful pond. And she just knew that we would love that. Okay. And that was the thing that I loved to do during my teenage years, was go ice skating. Oh. And in those days, it was cold all winter, and you could... Yes. It wasn't a deep pond. It was probably only 4 feet, but it used to freeze over, and you could spend all day or all night. And I just would go out and spend hours skating. So it was a wonderful choice. And that's how I spent
you
time.
Mentioned that. This is remarkable, because the winters, I don't recall, even though it gets cold, I don't remember it getting so cold that ponds like that would freeze, that people could skate.
Yes.
That seems to be a climactic change almost.
And it wasn't deep, so maybe it stayed frozen. Okay. Oh, we had big snowfalls. I think, what was it, 46 or something?
Yes, yeah.
We went out and took pictures because it was up to our knees. It was a lot of fun.
Did you have chores that you were supposed to take care of as a kid?
Well, since my mother did the cooking, I used to like to do the cleaning and help her. Uh-huh. So that was one of my main chores, and cutting the lawn and doing all the things that had to be done in a house.
Yeah, to help out. Sure, that was. I'm going to assume that at some point in your life, you went to work and got paid for working outside of the home. What would have been your first paying job?
I was going to laugh. It was called Andy Specialties, and they were hiring people 12 years old, we heard, and we would all rushed over there, all the young people in the neighborhood. And I would be sitting there, and it would be a gumdrop wrapped in cellophane, and all you had to do was stick a stick on it with a witch or something. And then I guess they found out we weren't old enough. But that was the first job. My first real job was in Bloomingdale's. I was hired as a wrapper. And they hired too many wrappers, so they kept a few people, and I got put in what was called the tube room, which was really very interesting. The salespeople didn't have their own money in those days. They used to have these tubes like you'd find at a drive-in window at a bank. And the salespeople would put the money in the tubes, and they'd come down to a tube room. And then we had all these cashiers in the tube room sitting at desks, and they would be given, these tubes would come in, and they would make the change and send them back up.
It seems to me that there are some stores that even today, as we speak in 1998, that still use that system in stores of pneumatic air tubes or something, that you put the tube up and it disappears somewhere up in the ceiling and comes out somewhere.
There used to be it looked like a switchboard, a long wall, and there was this very elderly woman that used to sit on a chair that would roll back and forth, and all these tubes would be coming out, and she would be rolling back, and then she would address them to each one of the cashiers sitting in the room.
Now there's a job for you.
I think it was the biggest Christmas ever that the retail industry had, and somebody had to count all this money, and I remember we used to go up, when I would come to work on Saturday, go upstairs, and mountains of money all over the place, and my job was just to verify it.
Yes.
But, they'd open a little peephole and you were allowed it. But that was Bloomingdale's. That was nice. I didn't stay there very long because it was a summer job, and then I kept it during the fall.
Well, now you see, if somebody had told me prior to this interview that Harry Papine used to be a rapper, I would say, what? Not R-A-P-P-E-R, W-R-A-P-P-E-R, that you did
That was my first real job because I was just 16.
Yes.
When we were in college, we had everybody from Queens, it seemed, worked at Altman's or Lord and Taylor, and I went to Altman's. So we would have Saturday jobs. That was interesting because you knew everybody.
Was there you mentioned the busiest season. Was there a family holiday that was significant to you and your own family, that every year would be a significant time for getting together and
Rosh Hashanah. My uncle would come over. My mother would make traditional dinner.
Traditional meals.
It was very nice.
Yes.
We did not come from a religious household, but because her parents had given up the religion after a while, and so the children didn't follow it religiously. But there were still some things that you cling to.
Rituals, sure.
You cling to.
Sure, it's part of who you are, identity. Describe yourself as a kid. What were your interests? A typical day after school, what would you have done? I
loved to read. After summers, I just spent the whole summer just reading and playing games. I probably started playing Monopoly when I was 10, and we did a lot of that. And I had girlfriends, and we used to, that's the kind of thing we did. Now, when I was in my teens, I was close enough to the city, and I would go into Manhattan a lot. And when I was in college, all during those times, we would go to the theater, we'd go to the ballet, we would go to the opera, we would go standing room if we had to. And the theater was $2 or $3.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When you went into the city, that was going into town in those days, but you went in dressed. There was a certain way of carrying yourself when you went into the city that is very, very unlike what it is today. I mean, people go into the city today, very very casual jeans and so on. Am I wrong to say that it was different then? You got dressed up to go into the city, or no?
As my recollection of jeans is, I remember it was Washington's birthday, and I think my sister wore jeans. We were walking to Main Street, and that was really a surprise, because jeans were not common. I don't remember what it was we wore, frankly, because we didn't wear pants. I didn't start wearing pants teaching until getting on into the mid-70s.
Exactly, sure.
It wasn't accepted.
No, it was not.
No,
there were even dress codes that forbade it in a lot of
But
schools.
that was the wonderful part about being able to get into the city. You could go anywhere. We took ballet lessons in the city. You could do anything you wanted.
Yeah. And as you said, the price of tickets was a lot less than.
You could go skiing
prohibitive then.
if you wanted. Yes, you could see the greatest place for a couple of dollars.
Yes. What one of the most memorable shows that you saw during that time of your life? Is there a particular show that comes back to you?
I remember seeing Jose Ferrer in The Shriek. It was wonderful, the city center.
Are you, would you consider yourself a night person or a day person? They classify people in terms of their sleeping patterns as larks or owls. What are you?
I'm definitely a day person.
You like to be up early in the morning and out.
Mm-hmm.
I identify with that being the most creative time of the day for me too, the high energy time. Do you have, or have you ever had a favorite season of the year?
It always used to be the spring.
Used to be?
Used to be. And then I began to really, really appreciate the fall colors. And I was like, oh, it's gorgeous. There's beautiful colors. So I'm a little mixed now.
What about, you mentioned fall. What I think of is the aromas that you used to smell in the fall that you don't smell anymore.
Oh, yes. The bonfires, the leaves burning.
Yes.
No, that was very common.
Yes, it was.
Just go out and make a pile and burn your leaves.
That's right.
But make sure your lawn was all raked up before you started.
Are there any other aromas that when you detect them bring you right back to a moment in childhood that you only think about when you get a fragrance of something? I don't know if there are specific aromas that
sometimes I think I used to go swimming at the Y and it had a lot of chlorine in it.
Yes.
Sometimes I seem to remember those days when I'm swimming at the Y.
What was the first school you attended, Harriet?
You mean elementary school?
Yeah.
I don't remember the number, but it was in Brooklyn. Okay.
You don't do you remember your first day of school? Was it memorable or no?
No, but I do remember snatches of teachers that were really very nice, very sweet.
Tell me about some of the teachers you remember. Either grade or name or whatever you can.
What I remember is we had 8A and 8B.
Yes, yes.
And of course all the smart people were in 8A and all the dumb people were in 8B, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
I remember tall people. They were supposedly the ones that got left back in the back of the room.
Oh, dear.
Or they'd line us up according to size. Of course, I was always first in line. Or they'd line you up how smart you were. First row, first seat.
My gosh.
They would do all kinds of. And the whole class would read at one time. So you'd open the book and everybody would mumble. So they didn't know what you were reading or whether I don't know how they taught reading.
Oh, golly.
What
a workshop for learning how not to teach and how not to be an educator.
Yeah.
The other schools that you attended after that elementary school, can you tell us what they were in some kind of order where you went? Did you go to a middle school or a junior high?
No, it was eighth grade.
It was 8th grade.
But something I do remember from Brooklyn, they did have a summer school, and I remember wanting to go, and I did go, and they said it was a play school. It was marvelous.
Oh.
It was really, really good.
When you say play school, what do you mean by that?
Well, we would go all day during the summer.
Oh, okay.
Or in the morning, I don't remember the hours, but I probably was only 6 or 7 and sing songs and do artwork, and it was wonderful.
Oh, sure. That's
having
like
a place to go.
For socialization and being with other kids. When you finished the 8th grade, did you go right to high school at that point?
Yes, I went to Flushing High School.
Okay. And when you finished Flushing, you then, did you go to work or did you go to school after that?
I went to Queens College.
Okay. And did you do both degrees? Did you do an undergraduate and graduate degree at Queens?
No, I did. I got a BA.
Okay, from Queens.
Yeah.
And then it was years later that you decided to go back and
then I went back and I was certified in education, and eventually I went and got a master's in, it was just certification.
Yes.
At Hofstra. Then I got a master's in special ed from C.W. Post.
Oh my, so you've seen a good deal of academic training in a number of institutions.
Going back to the chlorine at the Y, I have to mention that in those days we always had the polio scare.
Oh, that's true.
And I wasn't allowed to swim in any public places in the 30s. So I really never became I never became a good swimmer.
Yeah. That was a very real concern, the prevalence of that until the Salk vaccine came along. And that wasn't until, what, the late 50s, I recall?
Well, my children got it, so, yeah probably in 60, 61.
60s,
no, you weren't allowed. I wasn't allowed in the water. They suspected that it was carried by the water, so pools were out of the question, although there were pools around, and I could have gone swimming in them.
Very risky, sure.
Couldn't even go to the beach and swim. We were taken early in the morning and then taken home for a short time.
That's right. See, it's great to ask these questions because this is stuff that slips through the cracks if you haven't been there. How about memories of high school teachers? Do you have any favorite subjects or favorite teachers that you remember?
I remember, I think his name was Mr. Golder. He was always preparing us to be tough in the outside world.
Oh, really? Yes.
He wasn't too kind. Yes, I remember admiring the French teacher tremendously. I think her name was Miss Worms. And I just really loved one of the math teachers I had. She was, so you really become to love school when you get these teachers that seem to be so devoted. She was, I think, in algebra, and I ended up tutoring the algebra in her class. She was very nice. So all in all through the years, I remember teachers being very sweet, very kind, very helpful, nice.
I think you're lucky if you have even a handful of people who affect you that way, that you take with the memories that you take with you, because it's true that sometimes outside of family, teachers have a profound influence on kids.
I think that's why I really love teaching in Brentwood, because I always felt like an underprivileged child since I came from a single home and there was very little money and I didn't have a father. And all these people were so kind and very helpful and lovely. And I always felt in the classroom that these children came from, a lot of them, not all of them, from disadvantaged homes. And the least you could be is so good to them while they were in your care. Now,
when you made a decision to go back to school and to be certified, and then ultimately you did start to teach in Brentwood at some point, what year would that have been?
1970.
That would have been 1970. And you began after were you interviewed for the position?
Yes, Tom Hastings hired me. And sent me on the interviews.
Yes.
And then I went to Pine Park, and I managed to get a kindergarten job in Pine Park.
Oh, so you began with kindergarten.
4 months.
And who was the principal?
I think it was Herb Blackman.
Okay. Remember we talked about that before, and we weren't sure of who it was.
And then there was no position. Oh, by the way, the kindergarten teachers there were just wonderful. They were so helpful because I had been in a private school and I really didn't know. I did my student teaching in the private school, and so the public school had different ways of keeping records.
Sure.
And it was Miss Young and Mrs. Taylor, and they had me under their wing, and it was good.
One of the things that I guess that you experienced that I also experienced is in the early years of working in Brentwood, there were mentors, there were teachers that didn't have to, but came and put their sort of their arm around you and guided you through and taught you the ropes.
Exactly how to fill out all of the forms, and we cooperated. We would change for different subjects. We would teach each other's children.
What were some of the impressions that you made or that were made then when you first came to Brentwood and you got to look at the public school system here and the kids and the people? What were the first impressions you had?
After coming from a private school?
Yes.
I was amazed at how wonderful the teaching was. I was really, really surprised. I had no idea. You think the private school has everything. Yes, it has smaller classes. But the caliber of the teachers in Brentwood were really wonderful, and they cared.
What are some of the, if you can reach back to some of the specific memories that you had of some of your first years, a situation or an individual that worked with you in a particular way that you can recall? Is there something that you can hang a hook on or put a hook on here? Maybe the person who occupied a classroom next to you, or maybe an experience in a teacher's lounge or between classes or after school. I'm trying, I'm just reaching blindly to try to trigger something that you might be able to recall. You taught kindergarten certainly for that first year.
4 months.
For 4 months.
And then I went into first grade.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I moved to Twin Pines.
And what did you teach there?
First grade.
And then you stayed with first grade for...
I don't remember the exact number of years, but it was first grade, second grade.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then what happened was the school went primary and intermediate type, where you had all of the children in K 1, 2, and 3 moved to Pine Park, and Twin Pines became 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, I see.
And so it was...
this must have been during the time of the real crowding in the district, where there was a crush of enrollment that was here, and
they redistricted everything. So then the choice was, where did I want to go? You could put in your choices of schools, but the people with the most...
through 3 or 4, 5, 6, right. Somewhere else.
And Mr. Demento was the principal at Twin Pines, and as much as I would have liked to stay and work with him, I wanted to stay in primary.
Okay.
So then it became a problem as to finding another school, because they didn't need that many people in Pine Park. So my next choice was Northeast, and that's where I went.
What were the size of the classes, Harriet? Do you remember how large or small they were at that time?
They were, most of the time they were capacity.
They were at capacity. What would that have been? What would capacity
Could be 24.
Yeah. Okay.
And then even third grade, 24, 26.
One of the things that I've always admired, as I've, whatever dealings I've ever had with people at the primary level, particularly in kindergarten, first grade, is not just the energy level, the resourcefulness, the creativity, because you never have a moment when you can just sit back. You have to be on top of those little balls of energy every minute.
Harness, that's right.
They will, just like the older ones, I mean, there's always testing going on, but they don't even realize they're testing. They're just involved and oblivious to dangers and oblivious to anything except having fun or the moment. And you're always working, even when you're off duty, so to speak. Your mind is, can I use that in class? How could I use this? How can I save money by bringing this in and using that? And over the summers, you're still working, thinking of things.
Oh, yeah, because we got very little in supplies.
Yeah.
And so we had to really outfit the classrooms ourselves. And all along the way, they would give us small amounts of things to work with. So you could accumulate over the years. But initially, you're really responsible for that classroom yourself.
Yes. I just, the preparation that you received at graduate school and the formal training, do you think it adequately prepared you for what you faced when you got into the classroom and you were working with kids?
Well, I had many years of experience at Moore Country. I ran the nursery there.
Okay, so that's where you really got your experience.
That's right. Working with the children was never the problem. I think they could have done a better job in the graduates or in the undergraduate school of teaching you to teach reading. They gloss over that, and then they leave it up to you. They do a good job at a lot of things, but at that time, you didn't take a specific class with the intricacies of reading. And I think that's where it was weak. I think they may have improved on that.
Incidentally, what's happened with the teaching of reading in the last few years? Has it changed its direction again, or is it by the time that you were ready to retire? Do you think that the path that was being followed was the right way to go, or was it not?
They can't seem to make up their mind what works.
Okay.
No matter what you would do, I found in Brentwood, I'd say a good 1/3 of the class could do very well in reading. They would read on a first grade or second grade. They were really on their way. Then the middle group might have just finished the first half of first grade, and they've got a good foundation, and they're on their way, and they'll pick up as they go. And then no matter what you did, you had the other group that had a lot of difficulty. I do myself think they need a good, firm phonics background. And
Okay.
not this whole reading, not this whole book. They can read the whole books, yes, these big books, but then when they see the same word in a different book, they don't recognize it. So they just learn to memorize it and they get in with it. So it's like an osmosis. You can feed in all of this information, and then you hope the light goes on.
Right. At some point when they're ready, perhaps. There was a book, it's a good number of years ago, that came out of Philadelphia about how to teach your child to read, and it espoused a philosophy of having kids crawl on the floor.
Oh, yeah, but that's, there are certain children that have neurological problems, and that kind of program was for those kind of children, where you go back and you start all over again with learning to use your whole body, and the right side and the left side, and
reprogramming.
I knew somebody that went through that, and he never really did become a good student. Came from a highly intelligent family, and he had problems. I knew him in nursery school, and he went through that program, but he didn't really ever become, so to speak, a bright, normal child or person as an adult now.
So we're still chasing after the best way to teach reading, then, it sounds like.
I think
maybe there is no one best way. Maybe there's a lot of different ways that work.
The sorry state of affairs is I really think that too many of our children come from homes where they're not exposed to the kind of materials that they have to be exposed to. Books.
Yes, I agree.
And writings, and an academic kind of atmosphere where they're not drilled on the reading, but certainly geared where stories are always read to them, where the mother and father are reading things. They come from homes where there's nothing to read in the house.
I'll tell you, this is bizarre. My experience was at the secondary level, but I found that I would read stories to my 11th and 12th graders on occasion, short stories, but I would read them aloud. And I had a rapt audience. And some of the students would tell me that they were never read to as children. And I found that I was filling a real need that had never been there. And this is in 11th grade. So I agree with what you're saying, that many of our kids come without that.
And I don't think children are spending much time reading. Even the good readers. If you go into their homes, you never see them with a book in their hand. They're either flying off to some kind of lessons or some other thing.
I wonder if through a back door the computer may provide another opportunity, because certainly that's not just visual, but it's also graphic. It's also, there's a lot of reading.
Well, yeah,
required.
They could learn to read to some degree.
Yeah.
Do you think anything will replace books? There's something wonderful about opening a book.
Absolutely not.
And really enjoying it.
I can still remember the fragrance of a children's library and opening the book and smelling the old musty pages and thinking that was something special.
Maybe not all of the time, but I think there should be times during the day when they don't know what to do and they just go pick up this book instead of saying, I'm bored.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. You, besides your teaching, you must have gotten involved in other kinds of pursuits or other kinds of activity during the time that you taught. Were there other things that you were assigned to do? At what point, for example, did you have anything to do with the BTA? Did you get involved with the union at some point?
Just 1 year I was a delegate.
Would that have been a building delegate?
Yeah, a building delegate. Although I do strongly believe in unions.
Oh, for sure.
As a matter of fact, the year I came in was the year that there was a threatened big strike in Brentwood. And we met over at the Colony Hill, I guess it was. And I'm all for unions. I think they really have their place.
Yes. Has your opinion of unions as we both know unions to be, has it changed over the years? Did you one time have a different opinion of unions?
No, I was always in favor of unions.
Okay. Do you have any contact? I'm going to switch gears here briefly and just ask you if the youngsters that you've had in class over the years have, of course, grown up. Do you have any contact with any of them? Do any of them call or say hello once in a while? Do you bump into them? Well,
I had 2 children from the Beck family. I had James and Lori. And the family moved to Florida, and I keep in touch with Phyllis.
Okay.
And James somewhat, and she sends me pictures of them. I also had an invitation this June to attend the graduation from a student I must have had in 1989.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, and she gave me a beautiful card.
Oh, great.
It was really nice.
There's the extended family of that teachers enjoy sometimes.
You never know what impression you really did make, and obviously I made a big impression on her.
Wonderful. What about your own teachers? Has there ever been any contact maintained with any of the people that you went to school with or taught? Okay. All right. This may be a question that you can address, or you can choose to skip past. But it's one that I ask everybody of. Some of the lovable characters, some of the people that they've met along the way in Brentwood that made impressions upon them that we retain. I don't know if you are able to talk about any of the people that you've met and remembered that some watching this tape may also recall.
That one I'm not prepared for.
Okay. And I can understand that. You retired, what year exactly?
1991.
Okay, and that was after 21 years of service in the district, I think?
Yes.
Okay. Why, Harriet, did you decide to retire?
I think you said it a few minutes ago. The first graders have a lot of energy. You're constantly thinking about what to do next. You have very little time during the day. You have no time for yourself. And I found that my energy level was ebbing, and I had reached an age where I just felt like I didn't want to shortchange them. And yet, when I came home from school, I had nothing left for me. I spent all my energies in school. And so I felt, in fairness to myself also, I used to say, when I could no longer get excited about, look, I lost my tooth.
Yes.
The time had come to leave.
Yes.
It's not fair to them if you're kind of tired.
Yeah,
I've heard
I
it.
can understand that. Was there one accomplishment that you can point to and say that you were really proud of, or was there anything you can point to specifically and say, I feel proud that I was able to see that through or to achieve that?
As in terms of Brentwood?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an overall picture. I always felt that every day that I went, I gave my best.
Yes.
I didn't spend those kinds of days just resting because I had to go out that night or I was out late the night before. I didn't go to school. I used to go to school tired. I used to get plenty of rest the night before, prepared, and I would try.
Yes, sure.
To be enthused.
That's no small accomplishment in and of itself, because the tendency or the temptation very often is to just coast or to...
Oh, I could have gone through a couple more years coasting along.
Sure.
I can't, no, that wouldn't have been what I wanted. It wouldn't be fair to them.
Mm-hmm. And the last building assignment you had before you left was?
Northeast.
In Northeast, okay. There was a moment ago, I know I wanted to ask you something that'll probably come back to me in a moment, but it slipped away momentarily. Let me leave it there for a second. What have you done with yourself since you retired? What have you been doing since then?
Well, since retirement was for me, that's pretty much what I've left time for. Traveling. I also...
Talk about that for a minute. What kind of traveling have you been doing?
I travel to see family.
Okay.
I have the time, and I've traveled with a group that travels, the retiree group. Gone to Turkey, France, been to Europe, and this year we're going to Spain, as a matter of fact, next month.
Any surprises in Turkey?
I know, it was a nice country to visit. It was really fun. Food was delicious. People were very polite. It was nice. I felt safe. It was good fun. It was different. Lots of ruins, a lot of history, tremendous amount of history. Wonderful museums in Anatolia and around. It was a nice country. I really recommend it. It's a whole new world, more exotic.
Okay.
I didn't know what to expect. I was
So
pleasantly surprised.
Okay, that's what I guess. If you didn't put any expectations up there, there were.
And we didn't go into Southeast, so it was perfectly safe. We had a marvelous guide. She had been a very educated woman, and she was with us all the time. And
it must be wonderful also traveling with a group of colleagues that
it's fun.
The possibilities for laughs and for also I must say that many of our colleagues are very knowledgeable people, and I can't think of a more stimulating group of people to travel with.
Oh, it's wonderful because you always have somebody you're going to talk to. You're not with the same person all the time. Not that that is so terrible, but you've always got somebody new, and you've always got somebody you can identify with and meet and talk to, and the group has been very, very cohesive.
I asked you what you've been doing since you retired, and one of the things that you mentioned was travel, but that's not all you've been doing.
No. Having worked for so many years and raised a family, and an extended family for a short time, I studied bridge, took lessons, and got into a bridge group, which is fun. I find it stimulating. Bought a computer because I was not computer literate, and been learning how to use that and getting on the internet. I also have worked with the literacy volunteers of Suffolk County, and I've had 2 students. As a matter of fact, I'm working with one now, a young man who is trying to put his life back together and never really learned to read well, and he wants to better himself.
And how old is this young man?
He's 42.
God bless.
He has 4 children. And he'd been away from the family for several years. He had a substance abuse problem. And he's just...
You haven't
he
stopped.
Looks differently. He looks different. He looks wonderful.
Isn't that
He's
great?
really... His wife has gone to Suffolk, gotten a 2-year degree. She got a job, and he's beginning to feel good about himself.
Oh, Harriet, what a wonderful story that is.
And he's... People that haven't learned to read, by that time, usually have a problem.
Yes.
So it's taking time. But he fooled around a lot in school. He admitted it. He never paid attention. And he just missed out.
Yeah. And the years do fly.
Oh, yeah. And he wanted to get a commercial driver's license, and you have to pass the test for that. He drives. So that's his goal.
Okay.
And we've been working through with all kinds of materials.
What would be your answer to the purpose that you have been attempting to serve all the years that you were working? In other words, a job description of a teacher is very, very clear, but that doesn't answer the purpose that we ourselves say, I am trying to achieve. How would you have defined your own purpose?
Well, the expression, I could win the war but lose the peace. And what I wanted to do was to just do these things and have them enjoy it while they're doing it for themselves, and not to jam it down their throats, but to just try to always point out to them the need for why they're doing it and what the importance is. And I would always interject that when it seemed like this is so mundane and I really can't be bothered with this. I try to emphasize that you're going to have this for the rest of your life. Okay. So if you just learn it now, it'll serve you well.
It sounds as if that's still your purpose in doing what you're doing even afterward, because that's the way I see you, as a very, very facilitative person, very supportive, and not at all pushy or forceful in helping people achieve what they want. You've also, I want to mention, because you haven't mentioned it yet, I know you're getting to it, is that you have volunteered to act with the retiree organization, and you have up until recently occupied the position of treasurer for the organization. How many years did you do that? Since it began?
Since it began in 91.
In 91. And here we are in 98, and you've just been relieved of that responsibility?
Well, it started, Dot Zuckerman started, and of course Dot worked in Northeast, and so I knew Dot very well. We're all friends. We worked on the Sunshine Committee together, and Ruth McCalla, who became our program chairman. So it was this little nucleus. We all knew each other, and here we're all starting this new organization, and I really like the organization. I think there's a great need for it. It has a lot of information that you can get through our group, and I would hope that more people would be very active in it.
And certainly you've been very dedicated and have given a good deal of time to that. Does that pretty much cover what you've been doing with your time, besides getting some sleep that you didn't get before and getting some rest and doing some reading?
Retirement is marvelous.
Yes.
It's good for everybody.
You didn't have any trouble making an adjustment,
No.
did you?
I couldn't believe how marvelous this is. I really love it.
During your working years, is there something that you can say gave you the most pleasure? There are moments or situations that gave you the greatest thrill?
Well, I think that all teachers have it. You're in a classroom, you're teaching a lesson, and the children are enthused, and they seem to have learned, and the kids are running around and grabbing books and reading to each other, and that's what it was all about. Yeah. For them.
Yes.
You know, you gave them something, and you can never take it away from them.
Speaking of kids running around reading books, what kind of books do you like to read?
Oh, mysteries.
Okay, all right.
Do
you have is there an author that you like to follow, or is it just anything that has to do with?
I read all of Patricia Cornwell and Sue Grafton, and I just finished the first one of his books. I don't remember his name. Yeah, I read a lot of it.
It's remarkable how many teachers I've spoken to and educators I've spoken to have a passion for mystery books and reading.
Well, the one I just finished was about international intrigue and the CIA, and it was
full of information.
Yeah. Yes, lots of information about how it all works. And it takes you into different parts of the world.
Has there been more than, well, let me rephrase my question. There have had to be many books in your life that have had a profound influence or effect upon you at that moment. But I'm wondering if you can name one right now for us. One book, any book that you've read over the years that at the time you read it had a really eye-opening effect on you or had a profound effect on you. It's a tough one to single out when there are so many books that we've read. Do you remember the first book you ever read?
I used to read all of the Nancy Drew and the Bobbsey Twins and the Lassie books and the Black Beauty, and then I went through a fairy tale. I read every fairy tale they wrote, and there was my sister in every one of those stories, the Wicked whatever. You know how you put people's faces to these.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I used to go through authors. I used to read every book by that author. And before I had children, of course, I had all this time. I used to delve into these books.
Do you have a theory as to why kids today are reading the kinds of things that what's become very popular, these very scary Stephen King type of things that kids read today? Do you have a theory as to why?
I don't know too much about what. I only know at my granddaughter's level. Yeah. I know she's read all of the Babysitters. She must have about, I don't know how many they wrote. 40 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, she goes through these, and she's reading mysteries now, but they're harmless mysteries because obviously you're not going to, anything that's really scary.
Right.
No, or the Anne Rice. People love those books. I've never read, I don't really like frightening books or frightening movies.
No, me either.
It's an escape. Actually, I love comedies when I go to the movies. I much prefer comedy, not Saving Private Ryan. Now, I want to be relaxed. I want to laugh.
You may already have answered this question in other ways, but I'm going to put it to you straight. What do you miss most about not being active in the classroom anymore?
I do miss the children. You know, it's wonderful to interact. You always have children you just love. And it's fun to go in and to be with them and their enthusiasm. And I also miss the teachers that I worked with. Yeah. Very much.
But what you don't miss, Harriet,
is the preparation and the worry and the responsibilities. Yeah, where Saturday and Sunday are your own and report cards aren't due or some other thing.
Yeah, deadlines.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to have been able to accomplish that you felt that you didn't accomplish in the time that you had?
In the schools?
Mm.
I mean, of something I could have, should have done or
Well,
aimed for?
If looking back, you say, you know, one of the things that I would really like to have seen accomplished before I left, or one of the things I wish I could have done something about that was beyond my ability to control or beyond my control, was what?
Well, the way I saw the setup in the schools, there wasn't much, I didn't feel I had much input. There was a hierarchy, and you could only have so much input, and then those that were above did what they wanted. So I just accepted what was, did what I wanted in my classroom. If I wanted it, I did it, or if I needed it, I bought it. And you're in control. That's what I liked about it. The classroom was your own domain. You shut the door and you could teach and nobody would interfere with what you were doing. And I think this is a plus.
You must have, because you worked so closely with children and with their families, you must have seen things and known things that were sometimes very difficult to take home at night once you learned these things. You must have. How did you separate from your own life the things that would otherwise have caused you not to sleep at night once you knew about them? I mean, it becomes, you know what I'm talking about. There are things that are very difficult to continue to live with, knowing that it's out of your control. You can't do anything about it.
Well, if it was really something that was serious, you could always appeal to the nurse to handle it.
Something that was reportable, in other words.
That's right.
Yes.
First grade children they're not as complicated often as junior high and high school children, because first grade children tend to accept what is. If something were really going on, you might call a parent and not present it to them, but in a roundabout way, try to get through.
Yes.
You know that you have no control once they go home.
Yeah.
You can only make life as good for them when they're with you as you possibly can. And very often they had such disturbed homes that when they would come in on Monday morning, it took a long time to get them back into the groove, the
pace or the rhythm.
They needed that structure.
Yeah.
And they came in so unstructured and they had to get back. And it's hard. You realize with the kind of lives they had, hard for them to concentrate on what's going on in the classroom as compared to what they may have seen outside.
Yeah.
But I found these children very responsive, and you could get through to them.
Kids are flexible, they're malleable, but you need the personality of someone like you who seems to me very patient. Patience is an essential ingredient. Right. What do you see? Philosophical question. There's been a lot of changes proposed for standards for raising the bar, both for students and for teachers in the state this year of 1998, all of which will have some, it would appear, profound effects upon kids and classroom situations. I mean, it's not your job and it's not mine anymore. But have you given any thought to what might be ahead for people who are still in the classroom and for the kids?
I think the pressure is going to be tremendous. I remember the days when they used to come to the door, call you out, hand you a letter that said you may not have a job next year or the year after. They used to have to give you 2 years notice after a while. And you'd go back in and you'd say, I'm not going to have this job until you. And you'd feel so hostile, but you can't, children, it's not their fault.
No. But
I can see if you're being measured and how well you teach, how it could affect your teaching, because you're very pushy. You've got to get it. You've got to get it. I don't think it'll particularly improve the teaching. Remember, teaching is an art. It's timing. when they're ready. Some days they're just not zeroed in. Some days you don't feel like doing something yourself. You have to go with the tide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to put a lot of undue pressure on teachers, and I think that's going to pass on to the kids. I don't think it's going to be a good idea.
So much of what happens is the political winds, too, of the times. Mm-hmm. You began in 1970. Throughout the 70s, there were all sorts of economic pressures on the country, and that filtered down to the classroom. Then the 80s was a whole different experience. And now the 90s, such as what we've seen so far, is different yet again.
Oh, yeah.
But there's always politics, and there's always pressure to change something. And that, as you said, is filtered down to where teachers deal with it. The community then becomes either proactive or reactive to it, and kids ultimately feel the pressures.
Well, I can see this recertification, tremendous pressures. It's not only what you know. I mean, you have to have a knowledge. If you're a math teacher or a science teacher or a reading teacher, you have to have this knowledge. But to constantly be under this pressure.
It's what you're saying, what I hear you saying, it's not just about content, it's also about the process of education. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that we need to address? Is there anything you want to say to your colleagues? Is there anything you want to say to new teachers? The
new teachers, I think, are doing a marvelous job. From what I could see before I left, and I see now with their enthusiasm, Brentwood's doing a great job in hiring really, really good people. And these kids really need it, because if they don't get it from the schools, I don't know where they'll get it from.
But they're standing on your shoulders, Harriet, you see. They're standing on your shoulders and all the other people who have dedicated the last 20 or 30 years to creating a situation where miracles happen in this district. Mm-hmm. And are continuing to happen for many, many more kids now from many, many more places in the world that are coming here. I can't thank you enough for giving us the time to come and do this.
No, thank you.
And I wanted to thank anyone who has stayed with us for this interview, for remaining with us, and look forward to seeing you at our executive board meeting in the near future.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure.